So hi everyone and welcome to this roundtable as part of WTIN's Innovate Textile and Apparel Virtual Trade Show. I'm Fiona Harron, the Technical Textiles Editor and Team Leader at WTIN, and I will be moderating this session today on an antimicrobial future for textiles. We've of course seen a hive of activity in this area recently, with companies across the textile and apparel supply chain either entering the antimicrobials market or enhancing their existing technologies in order to help protect consumers against viral and bacteria threats, including COVID-19. And so before we begin the discussion, I'd just like to introduce you to today's panelists. First, we have Nick Carter, Market Business Intelligence Director at AVGOL. Nick is a molecular biologist specialising in infectious disease and an industry consultant at North Carolina State University for its antimicrobial material PhD programme. Secondly, we have Dr. Selina Ambrose, Technical Manager at Promethean Particles, which is collaborating with textile companies and research facilities to explore the antiviral effects of novel copper nanoparticles designed for use in fabrics and PPE for the healthcare sector. Then we have Sanjeev Swami, CEO and founder of Living Guard, a hygiene technology company which recently applied its tripellant technology to face masks comprised of 3 layers that provide 5 levels of protection against COVID-19. So welcome everyone to this roundtable. It's great to have you here all to discuss what is an increasingly prevalent area in textile technology. So Nick, if we could start with you, could you tell us a little bit about the antimicrobial consultancy work you carry out at NC State, and then explain how you also apply your experience in molecular biology to AVGOL?
Certainly. Maybe I'll put that around and address the background first, how that led me into NC State. So as you mentioned, indeed, I've got a great deal of experience in molecular biology, infectious disease being my particular focus, worked with both bacterial and viral targets, so a very heavy background in microbiology and virology. I've applied this as I've wandered through my career in alternate applications, including being part of the ISO 8573-7 work group for compressed air and bacterial loading there, vastly improved the standards. When we start looking specifically at AVGOL, obviously an opportunity to improve the performance, enhance, add new performances to nonwoven fabrics that are used in various applications, ranging from hygiene to. And back in 2018, came on full board with AVGOL. Exploring this opportunity, we were able to identify a novel approach to creating a technology that has a very broad spectrum of performance, while also addressing some of the sustainability needs, the needs of our customers to have materials that are very consumer safe. So we, in order to create the technology, we also needed to be very involved with our local academia. And we work closely with a community college that has a biotech specific focus, and contributed various monetary and educational training to the college. And then that connected to NC State, where they're created an advisory board, a commercial advisory board. And part of that board is specifically focused on the nonwoven fabrics and how to modify those fabrics to attain enhanced performance. So certainly a number of different approaches that are out there in the field and how to address antimicrobial in general. And for Athgol, where we have gone to the benefit control technology that we launched at Hygienics in 2018, as well as our forthcoming benefit defense, which is very much tuned to antiviral performance. We've been able to bring a suite of technologies to our customers, the key brands of the world, to enhance their products, again, ranging from personal hygiene up to more durable applications, and then specifically very adaptable to face mask, gown, drape, and the like.
And Selena, as I mentioned in the introduction, Promethean Particles is carrying out some interesting research into the antiviral effects of copper nanoparticles. So what further steps has your company and your collaborators made with this research?
So we started looking at copper nanoparticles as an antimicrobial agent here at Promethean probably about 2 years ago as part of a collaborative project. But we're mainly looking at as an antibacterial, the properties of antibacterial properties of copper. Obviously with COVID, any virucidal properties are of greater interest. So in the last few months, we've continued working with research organizations, not just in the UK, but also overseas, looking at incorporating the copper into extruded nylon fibers so that the copper is impregnated into the fiber themselves. And we've been exploring the durability of these fibers as well, because obviously it's all well and good if there's virucidal effects as soon as the particles are embedded, but if they're to go into fabrics and textiles, durability is a key aspect there. So along with the research organizations, the nylon copper bicomponent fibers have been made into textile ribbons, and then those have gone through abrasion testing and also laundry cycles. So at the moment, we found that the kind of control sample gives us 95% activity against bacteria at this stage, and then also after 10 cycles of laundering, we found that the antibacterial properties only decreased by 3%, so down to 92%. So still very good durability, very good activity after 10 cycles. So that work is ongoing to see where the kind of breaking point, as it were, is. But in conjunction with that, we found that in the abrasion cycles, I think it was 200 cycles, saw that the antibacterial effects were still in the 90% plus. So we're confident that there's a good degree of durability in these fibers, but we're still working to improve that and try and get it as high as possible. And then in conjunction with that, we've sent samples to external testing labs to see specifically how effective the copper fibers and the copper nanoparticles themselves are against viruses. So not just bacteria, but all sorts of different viruses and specifically coronaviruses, so that we can determine how applicable our copper nanoparticles are to the current pandemic.
Okay, and Sanjeev, I understand that the layers of the mask treated with your technology protect both the wearer and others. So can you just talk us through the Living Guard masks to explain why they've been proven so effective at preventing the spread of infection?
I'll take the liberty of going back a few years.
Of course.
We worked on Living Guard, from about 2012. It wasn't Living Guard then, but I had a visitor from the British Army and he was probably the head of the SAS. And he happened to have a common friend with me, so he stayed with me in Bombay. And in the evening, we were having a drink together at home, and he said, "What if you're making clothes and you have a technology center? Why can't you make me clothes that I can wear for 2 to 3 weeks without washing?" And I said, "Why in the world would you want to do that?" Right? And he said, "Well, when we are on active duty, we wear the same clothes for up to a month, and what we have on is what we wear. We don't change it." We worked on that solution, but with the 400 soldiers in the SAS, it's not a great business model. And since then, we use the technology to filter drinking water in India. So we have now about 65 million people in India drinking water out of our filters. And this has been approved by the WHO as well as NSF at Ann Arbor, Michigan. So we pass global water filtration standards. Then we developed a product that I have. These are all social first. These are reusable sanitary pads. We have 1 million of these out there with schoolgirls, again, as a social project under the giveher5.org program. So giving her those 5 days back to the schoolgirls in India because they miss school when they have their menstruation cycle. And I have 2 daughters, so I took this close to heart to give them the equal opportunity. And we've been, of course, working with the apparel industry. We went to the EPA in 2014 to register our textile as a self-disinfecting textile, a technology. And we finally got our protocols in 2016. Our application is now pending with the EPA for a self-disinfecting textile. And basically that meant the protocol very simply said, wash the textile 30 times at 85 Celsius, and then bring it to the lab, or the lab in GLP has to test for a 5-day period, because they took the example of a lab coat that is worn over an extended period of time because doctors don't tend to wash that. So they said, let's take a lab coat and use it for a week. And then they had us inoculate that lab coat on the same small piece of fabric, 2 inches by 4 inches, total of 12 times. And on the same place with a very high organic load. And the 12th inoculation had to show a 5 log or 99.999% reduction in 10 minutes. And we've passed all those tests under GLP, and we've submitted it to the EPA. And of course, at that time, we also had to do all the safety tests. So we had to do dermal toxicity, deep dermal toxicity, skin irritation, and skin sensitization. So all the tests have been submitted, and our technology is a safe technology because essentially we don't use heavy metals. So we don't use silver, and of course, as the latest trend is to mix silver with titanium dioxide, which is known to be a carcinogen. And that for us is a huge problem. So we're very, very safe. And this learning that we've had, we've done more than 60,000 experiments in the last 7 years with various textiles and substrates and recipes. We also treat paper. We are currently working on a project for currency notes. We do paint, we do plastics. So we have a variety of recipes and technologies. And then we, of course, said when the pandemic broke out, will it have antiviral effect on the SARS-CoV-2? We knew it kills influenza. We had data on influenza, on poliovirus and yellow fever, and MS2, which is a surrogate for testing. But the SARS-CoV-2 virus is a very, very special virus because it has those spikes. And you have to get contact through those spikes to the cell wall, because Living Guard works on physical disruption of the cell membranes, not on poisoning or any other form of leaching technology. It's a physical reaction. So we then went to Dr. Gerber and in Arizona State University earlier this year, and we asked him to run the first test. And he ran it, and we had really good data. And that's when we applied for the EU sponsored project at Aachen and Berlin. And they tested this completely independently and then declared that each one of our layers of our fabric as a 99.9% kill of the SARS-CoV-2. Now, I have the mask here with me, and Nick, and all of you, if you send me your email addresses, I'd be happy to send you some masks. Yeah, that'd be a pleasure.
So,
Yeah. So, we have 2 layers on the mask, or 3. The inside layer is, it's like a t-shirt fabric, right? So it's a single jersey. This is hydrophilic in the sense that, you want the moisture from your mouth and everything to be absorbed, right? Because finally, everything is coming in the form of droplets. It's a spray which is carrying the virus. So you want a hydrophilic finish here, so that whatever's leaving your mouth is going onto this fabric and being absorbed and adsorbed by the fabric. Now, the test done by Berlin, they increased the size of the inoculum from 1 milliliter to 2 milliliters with an intention. So actually, the quantum of viruses that they put here was 1 million times more than one sneeze. That was the level that they went up to test. Okay, so we have the inner fabric, which is treated. Then you have a filter medium. This is a standard polypropylene filter. And then you have the outer fabric. Now, the outer fabric is also treated, but it's hydrophobic in finish. So, and the reason we want it hydrophobic is if you get water droplets hitting the fabric, we don't want it to go into the fabric. We want them to fall off. And why do we say 5 layers? Because this outside fabric actually has 3 layers. So they're invisible. So you have the living guard treatment is through the fabric, and then you have a hydrophobic finish on the top and on the bottom. So if you really have a sneeze going this way, you're going to have it first going to this cloth or a cough, then through the filter, then through the first layer of hydrophobic, then through the living guard treated fabric, and then another layer of hydrophobic. So we calculated essentially the chance of one virus going through is 1 in 1 billion. Either way, it's not going through. And that's why this mask is a washable mask. You just put it on the tap once a week, just rinse it out, and it's reusable. And it, the other part of the conversation, I think it's very important, is to understand is sustainability. Anything that lasts for a longer period of time is far more sustainable. You're not hurting the environment. Everyone is talking about the face masks being found all over the place, in the seas, in the oceans, and these are all contaminated, and this is going nowhere. So we are actually just transferring contamination instead of eliminating contamination. And now, if you look at the clothes, so our clothes should be out towards the end of this year, early next year, with major brands where they will actually tell you wash it once every 2 weeks. And that too in water without detergent. And now that's the real sustainable story, because then you're talking about being able to reuse water. You don't have bacteria in the water, so there's no harm in the water, less soap, and you're washing it many times less. And that's a sustainable story. So I think antibacterial textiles, coming to the theme of the subject today, was what is the role of antibacterial textiles? So one is provide the hygiene and protection, but the other side is sustainability. You have to have a very high sustainable angle and protect the environment. And we've just all learned, I think, in the last 5 months, what is the effect of not protecting the environment. I think it's the hardest lesson anyone can learn, is what we've learned in the last 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very interesting you talk about protecting the environment. That's just one of my questions in regards to health and safety when it comes to antimicrobial textile treatments. As we often hear about the risks of treatments potentially seeping into wastewater and marine water after being washed in some cases. Selena, I understand that in your line of research, you've looked at how nanoparticles, including copper, behave or transform if released in the environment. So can you tell us more about your findings?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of speculation and concern about the health and safety aspects of nanoparticles, nanotechnology. So we take the approach of producing nanomaterials as liquid dispersions rather than as dry powders, which means they're a lot easier to handle, because if you have a dry powder, these are very fine particles that can, pose an inhalation risk or explosion risks. So we take the approach of producing the dispersions, so they're liquid, in a liquid format, which means you don't have those inhalation risks for a start. But going to your question about environmental impacts, we've been part of various European projects over the years as part of the European Nano Safety Cluster to look at the kind of health and safety implications, as well as the environmental impact of the nanomaterials that we're producing specifically. So we were part of a project that ran until last year. So it was a large European consortium, various ecotoxicologists involved there. And the findings were that in general, because the nanoparticles, there's a lot of surface energy there. What tends to happen is that if they're going into wastewater streams, of course we try and avoid that if we can. But if there's some sort of accident and there's accidental release into wastewater in any form, the nanoparticles, well, especially in the case of copper, is quite reactive. And so there's a few different effects. Firstly is that because the nano size or nanoscale of the particles, there's a lot of surface energy there, as I said. So there's a lot of aggregation when you're not controlling the nanoparticle dispersion. So the particles tend to aggregate, and so a lot of those kind of nano effects are circumvented, really. So it starts behaving more like a larger particle for a start. Then also, because of the reactivity of copper, it tends to react with whatever ions are there in the wastewater. So forming sulfides or forming or oxidizing to form copper oxide or other copper type species. And these are actually widely found in the environment anyway, due to other sources of copper in other streams, So arguably the nano copper aspect, it doesn't stay as nano copper for very long. So the effects and fears of kind of negative impacts of the copper nanoparticles are actually not there, because it doesn't stay as nano copper in the environment for very long.
Mm-hmm. Nick, what's your take on this, on the health and safety aspects of antimicrobials?
So what we've been looking at from the health and safety perspective is kind of leaping off from what Selena and Sanjeev have already mentioned. For Avgol, we're looking at non-woven fabrics, ranging in applications from disposable, semi-disposable to durable. And when we look at the safety factor, it comes down to the mode of application really has to be understood. So the demands on a disposable product, such as a baby diaper or a menstruation product, will be different than a mask, will be different than a house wrap or a filter media. And when we start looking at those, there's multiple factors we want to consider. On one side, it is the consumer safety. So from a consumer safety, we're looking at, as Sanjeev also mentioned, similar kinds of skin testing, cytotoxicity, the biocompatibility of the technologies we utilize. And then for our products, we then go into pilot testing and panel testing. where larger and larger populations are used to evaluate the comfort of the product and then the performance of the product in use. The specific technology we utilize for benefit control is something we actually adapted over from the cosmetic and soap shampoo industries. So these are items that have a strong foundation in consumer safety. We're applying it in a different way, but the very similar kind of mechanisms, as Selena mentioned, incorporating additives directly into the very structure of the fabric is a very strong means to prevent leaching of that functional additive. Now, that leaching is important in two ways. One is many of your key brands out there where you have a personal contact, they don't want something that's going to leach onto the person. From one side, it can be very disruptive, realizing that these kind of materials can interrupt the normal biome of the skin, which can then open a person up to more profound infections, opportunistic infections. And then leaching is also a big issue with, okay, now what happens to this product when it is used, reaches into life. In the US, obviously, we have a lot of material that goes into landfills. They're having very biocidal materials can be problematic in that you can literally have, I don't want to call it poisoning, but it is something that aggressive to the landfill. What should I call it? The performance of landfill, the biology of a landfill, because we don't have the UV degradation or anything like that going on. So we already have significant issues with diapers that last too long. Well, now if we make them bactericidal, biocidal, well, now we can really make a diaper that lasts too long. So from a environmental perspective, we actually focus more on bacteriostatic performance. We want something that will allow the normal biome to return on a person. We want something that is more readily inactivated in landfills and does not cause any of this reduction in the biology of a landfill. And we also look at it from a recyclability. So once a product that has the additional antimicrobial performance, once we recycle, there are, whether it's a circular process by pyrolysis or if it's being repurposed into another product, we want to make sure that we don't have something that can kind of carry across or contaminate a recycling stream. So we focus on these technologies that are also liable, so that they will deactivate and basically come apart and no longer be functional when they go through any of these kind of recycling or circular processes.
Mm-hmm. And Sanjeev, can you just talk us through your company's approach to this? Because I understand that your technology is free of metals and does not leach. So how challenging was it to achieve this outcome?
Well, ours, the difference is, I think, our application process is far more complex, and we have a very difficult process of applying the materials onto the textiles or into any surface, and it's not as simple as, you know, when you I'm not talking about embedding the copper or in the extrusion process, but if you were to take a traditional silver chloride, which is today, you know, a mix of titanium dioxide and reaction of titanium dioxide and silver, which is applied in a padding process. You know, the Swedish authorities in Kami tested this, and they found that between 2 and 5 washes, everything really came off and went into the stream, and they call it reprotoxic. We on the other hand have a very high level of let's say 99% exhaustion onto the textile. So we can control that, we can measure it. We actually do that. So we need at least a 98% exhaustion. And then we use the water again and again, because the water doesn't foul, because it has an antibacterial in it. The liquor doesn't ever get spoiled. And eventually we're left with about 200 liters of water at the end of a month that we then evaporate naturally, and any residue is incinerated. So that's as far as the manufacturing process is concerned. But since our technology is basically a cationic technology, we have done studies in and we were asked to do this especially for the sanitary pads in India, and we were between 90 to 120 days completely gone. Except for the polyester parts in the textile, there was no antibacterial activity, because eventually we have such a small amount of polycations in terms of weight on the textile. They get neutralized very fast by any anionic substances in the landfills. So that is how it works. And we haven't got any, and we've checked a lot. We've done a lot of landfill studies. That's what we've spent the last 7-8 years doing. And we have a complete cycle where we found that the safety aspects are very high. And, in Switzerland, the water is really tested. We have 2 plants in Switzerland where we apply our technology, and in both of them we have complete, governmental approval. There's no problem in doing this at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And sort of looking to the future, starting with you, Selena, what are your company's next steps in terms of further research and development?
Yes, so here at Promethean, we specialize in the manufacture of nanoparticles, nanomaterials. So not just copper, but all sorts of different materials that we can make using our process and technology. So other metal oxides like zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, as Sanjeev mentioned before, and all sorts of other inorganic chemistries as well that could be applicable as antimicrobials, or to provide other properties to textiles. So to date, we've not had a huge, well, other than with the antimicrobials, outside of that, we've we're in no means experts in the textiles industry, but we're very keen to work with those who are, and looking at other ways that we can incorporate either copper or other nanoparticles into textiles to give those enhanced properties. So whether it's water repellency or flame retardancy, things like that. So yeah, there are a lot of opportunities out there, but the crucial thing for us is finding the right partners to form that value chain, because we're very early on there. Our particles would go into something else before it becomes an end product. So yeah, we're very, very open to collaboration, and yeah, hopefully we can develop a solution that delivers enhanced properties to textiles.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's a lot of potential there. And Nick, besides Avgol's focus on sustainability, which we've seen as well through the new NatureFit fabric solutions that the company recently launched, have the events of recent months led to any new developments in the antimicrobial benefit technologies that you launched?
It's kind of interesting. So we've been, benefit control was originally designed for antibacterial optimization. And so now we're doing the benefit defense, which is now optimized for antiviral performance. What we're actually encountering is less of a need to evolve our technology. It's turning into more of an education of the market. And this may be a common theme for the other panelists, but what we're finding, particularly with some of these companies that are new to making PPE, is that they're coming in, they have heard of antimicrobial technologies, and they got somewhere, somehow they've acquired a little bit of knowledge, which has now made them dangerous. For example, sometimes I'm presented that, yeah, we want something that will pass AATCC 100. And that's all that's specified. Well, okay, then that's a test protocol, but how long of a duration? I've had, if there's no clarification with that particular standard, the exposure of the material to the inoculum and the subsequent test can be up to 18 hours. Well, if you're wanting to do that in something that's going to have an exposure of 3 hours, the relevance of the results are pretty minimal. Is it a good fit for you as a product? So what we are finding is that our technologies are actually ahead of the knowledge base of the industry. So as we approach that, I think it's really twofold. Making sure the customer truly understands their application and what kind of performance they need to specify. And then, are the testing protocols appropriate to meet that specification? And, I think right now that's consuming more of our time than is really necessary to make any improvements in the technology, because our first and second generations still have a lot of life in them. And it's the understanding of the market that we have to work on.
Yeah, of course. And Sanjeev, I know you mentioned this at the beginning of the roundtable about how your antiviral technology is being placed into other products such as gloves and I think disposable wipes as well. So what progress have you made with this?
Well, we are going to introduce a variety of products with partners, and the gloves are next. So the reusable gloves, and that should provide a great degree of safety, and we call it the unfeared gloves. So you unfear yourself from touching things, we then we're going to come out of the range of socks, because we've successfully prevented the growth of T. rubrum, which causes athlete's foot and stinky shoes and stinky feet. So that should be up next. And of course, we are in a lot in food contact as well. We have a separate technology that just got approved by the European authorities, or the protocols were approved for adaptability to food under PT4. So we are certified for food contact. So a lot of our textiles are used in bakery for proving bread, as simple as that. And we're moving into a variety of areas. But what I really think, and I agree with Nick on that, is knowledge has to change. And I think people, by and large, are realizing that hygiene is now going to be a very important part of their lives. And I think textiles that represent hygiene are going to be more and more in demand than before. I strongly believe that the hygiene factor has now become an important part of people's lives, and people are going to get careful or they're going to die. And it's as bad as that. If you're not careful, you could die. And I think it's not only COVID that is killing people, or SARS-CoV-2. I mean, look at the deaths of MRSA in hospitals. That's staggering. And sometimes people get a hospital-borne infection, and they're in the hospital for 6 months, or maybe they have to have a hip replacement redone because it's infected. So you've got other problems. Tuberculosis is on the rise again. Yeah, and waterborne diseases is still the major, it's a large killer globally. So we have a lot of things to worry about, and I think hygiene is going to play a major role now in everyone's life, especially after the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic.
Of course. And I
Yeah.
imagine that you'll all receive lots of inquiries, lots more inquiries from people wanting
Yes.
to learn more about your technologies.
Yes.
And just as a note to end on, and in keeping with the title of this roundtable, I know, Sanjeev, you kind of touched on it there, but where do you see the textile industry heading in terms of antimicrobials? For instance, what technologies, treatments, or materials should we be exploring next? Selena, what are your thoughts here?
So, I mean, there are a vast range of different antimicrobial agents out there already, some more developed than others. And I think maybe in the future, manufacturers of textiles may be more open to looking at using a combination of all of these. So we, as I said before, we manufacture things like zinc oxide, not only copper, and other metal oxides as well, that like magnesium oxide, that have been shown to have antimicrobial properties. And it's possible for us to maybe create blends of those. So a solution that's comprised of a mixture of all of those different nanoparticles. And it may be that we start looking at not just one antimicrobial agent, but a kind of plethora, a mixture of all of those, so that there's a variety of different mechanisms to hit lots of different microbes, not just bacteria, not just viruses, but a whole wide range there, so that these germs and bugs really don't stand a chance. If one thing doesn't kill them, something else will. And so, yeah, that's an idea that we've been floating, and it's not something that we've in practice developed much, but it's certainly an idea, and I think there's a lot of potential there. So that's something that we're looking to explore here at Promethean, at least.
Okay, and Nick, how about you? What are your thoughts on this?
I'm in 100% alignment with Selena. What I'm envisioning is, and looking at the trends, is that right now the focus is very heavy on performance, but what will soon come after that will be cost, and which will convey to price, which will convey to the consumer. So value propositions are going to have to be very strong to meet the consumer demand and justify those premiums. I think the combinations of technologies, and particularly synergy between those technologies, along with some of the things we've been exploring, is finding synergists that enhance the performance of the technologies we're already using, so that we can use less and less of that material, which again has a commercial impact as well as an environmental. We have less of that material going out into the field. So I think the synergies and technologies, more tuning to the end use application will occur as the market catches up, really, and we start seeing what the bounds are in what we can produce. And I like Selena's perspective that a bug doesn't have a chance against what we have. I think we will be able in the future to respond much faster to new contagions, new infectious agents that will come along. Who knows what version it will be this next time, but I think from the learnings, the experience we've gone through now, and particularly in a very focused way, I think the ability to have a palette of solutions that I can use singularly or in combination to combat anything is really where we'll be strong.
Mm-hmm. And Sanjeev, do you have anything to add on this?
Yeah, I think the world is going to go more and more organic. I think inorganic products, chemistries are slowly going away. There's been a lot of development of cellulosic-based nonwovens that are very strong now. And in Living Guard as well, our first non-biocidal, what we call biocide-free technology has already come in certain products. We believe the world has to move to complete organic, biodegradable technologies in the next 5 years. So that's going to be the future, and that's where we are focusing ourselves on, and we will remain focused on completely going biodegradable and organic.
Excellent. That's been a great discussion. Thanks everyone for sharing your insights into this topic. And we're of course expecting to see lots more developments in the field of antimicrobials, so we'll be sure to keep a close eye on it, all of which you can learn more about at wtin.com. But for now, thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you soon.